This week's Piltch Point with Avram Piltch is proudly powered by Newegg. Whether you're building a new computer or upgrading an existing one, assuming maybe you have a laptop that has the ability to upgrade the RAM or hard drive, or you've got a PC that you need a new video card, all of that is available from Newegg, and a wide variety. And the thing that I find most interesting is their daily deals. They've been doing some really interesting stuff. Right now, they've got a really powerful gaming PC that's normally $22.49 on a daily deal for $16.49, which, that's a huge savings. But it changes every day. Monitors, PCs, and sometimes you'll find weird stuff like a bread maker, and I'm not making that up. That's on there right now. All of that is available by going to pilchpoint.live/Newegg. I love that there's a bread maker on here. Anyway, Avram, you're making some noise. Some noise usually means that you've got something to show us.
Yes. So I present to you an intriguing device. Intriguing are the words I will use. Is the word I will use. This, which the color is not quite coming through on how nice it looks on the camera, but this is the Samsung Galaxy Book 2 2-in-1. It comes with the keyboard, which is just like the Surface detachable keyboard.
Okay.
It comes with a stylus. Although I must say, no, this is not the stylus it comes with. Sorry. It comes with a stylus that is about that size, but is completely plastic, not metal. This is actually like the good Surface pen. And it's $999, and it's coming out November 2nd. Now, those are the most basic facts. What makes this 2-in-1 stand out is it is the first tablet to hit the market, or the first 2-in-1, the first device to hit the market, at least as far as we know, and in the U.S., with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 850 processor. But it is running Windows, so it is Windows on ARM. Now, folks may remember back in not that long ago in the spring, the first Windows on ARM laptops came out, and they were powered by another Qualcomm chip, the Qualcomm Snapdragon 835. This is the 850, so it's supposed to be faster and fix and deal with some of the problems that the 835 had. So what were the problems, and did it fix them? Well, the promise of these Snapdragon computers, which Qualcomm calls always connected PCs, and they say always connected because they have built-in 4G, and they wake from sleep pretty fast. And so the idea, and they also have Microsoft's connected standby, although so do several Windows laptops. So several Intel-powered Windows laptops. And they're powered by Qualcomm. Now, it's great that Qualcomm is getting into the PC business, because that brings a new level of competition to the duopoly of Intel and AMD. Although as a duopoly, Intel actually has a much, much larger share, but AMD still makes their fair number of x86 chips. So the fact that Windows now runs on these processors is great, but there's a limitation. Because these processors were made are ARM and not x86, which is the type of processor that Intel and AMD's are, they have to run an emulation mode to run regular Windows 32 apps. And what's a regular Windows 32 app, for those who don't know? It's any program that you don't download from the Windows Store. If you downloaded it from somebody's website and you clicked an installer and it installed, then that is a Win32 app, and that has to be run through emulation. So there are a lot of issues with the performance of those apps. So for example, Chrome browser, the most popular browser in the world, is not in the Windows Store. So it has to be run in emulation. And guess what? It's sluggish. So when I run now, it was much worse on the 835, but I'll tell you, running with about a little over a dozen tabs open and a YouTube video playing, there was a lot of lag. And like the video could be okay, but then if I click to change tabs, that it would take like 2 or 3 seconds for the tab to redraw. Now, and then a couple of times switching back and forth too quickly between things, the system would like freeze for a few seconds. So, that can happen on any computer that's overwhelmed, but this was overwhelmed. On Edge, on the Edge browser, which is, designed to work with these processors, it was a little bit better. It didn't really freeze, but redrawing was still a little slow. And then keep in mind that this $1,000 laptop has 4 gigs of RAM and a 128 gigabyte storage drive. So not exactly high-end specs to go with this processor that already is having trouble because a lot of things run through emulation.
Right.
And then there's some things that you just can't run at all because they're not available. This cannot run 64-bit apps. So Photoshop, any kind of Photoshop or Photoshop elements is 64-bit. There is in the Windows Store, I think it's Photoshop Express, which is a free sort of really neutered editor. So you could run that, but you can't run like the paid stuff. I need to use for work an app, a VPN client called OpenVPN. Mm-hmm. OpenVPN cannot run on this. OpenVPN has a 32-bit version, but it installs its own little driver, and most drivers for software drivers like that not compatible with the Qualcomm processor, so it just won't install. So while the Windows Store has gotten better and there's a lot more stuff you can download from it, there's still a lot of limitations with this. Now, so you've got this meh performance at best with like apps that work well on it. But you do have some wonderful things about the hardware. This screen is an OLED screen, and it is absolutely beautiful. It is 200%. It covers 200% of the sRGB gamut. This keyboard here that comes with it, unlike the Surface Pro where you have to pay $129 extra, is actually really good. Like it's pretty snappy.
Nice.
And it comes with the stylus. And the cameras, I don't know how many people are taking photos with their tablet. Cameras are pretty good too. The 8 megapixel rear camera took really nice pictures. The 5 megapixel front camera was better than pretty much any webcam I've used built in on anything. Nice. So it gets a lot of, the sound is pretty good. It gets a lot of things right. The battery life is okay, but not the level that you would expect from one of these Qualcomm chips that, they promised, over 20 hours of battery life. And this got, well, I don't know if they said over 20 for this, but various times they promised a ridiculous amount of battery life from these Qualcomm processors. This lasted 10 hours on our battery test. So the problem here is this cannot possibly be, they're not marketing it as a secondary device. So if someone from Samsung were here or Qualcomm or Microsoft, they would probably say, no, someone could use this as their only computer. I disagree. I think the only way that you could buy this device is if it's not your only computer and you have a good computer waiting for you at home. If you've got a desktop waiting for you at home and you need something to take with you on the train every day, to do some writing and review some web pages or whatever, this could fill that job. But would you fill that job for $1,000?
Right.
Would you spend $1,000 on a secondary device? if you say, well, wait a second, not everybody cares about performance as much as you, Avram. You're editor for Tom's Hardware. Of course you care. What about my mom? Listen, I couldn't disagree with that more. People who are not the most tech savvy or not the most into performance per se have the least amount of patience for things that don't work.
Yes.
That's where people get it wrong every time. Listen, my mom is not going to use Handbrake to transcode, and now I should take say what I'm talking about. I talk about my mom because it used to be when I was growing up, and people always say, well, will that work for my mom? Now we've got generations of people who are very computer literate, who are people's mothers. So when I say my mom, I mean someone who did not grow who is in their 70s or 80s and did not grow up with computers and is a bit and can use them, but is not technically astute even after using them for a number of years.
Sure.
So when I talk about that, like my mom would not need fantastic performance. She would not be playing high-end game, Witcher on here. She would not be transcoding a video on here. But you know what she would be doing? She would be surfing the web, and she would be writing documents. Mm-hmm. And when she was clicking on things and something didn't happen for 5 seconds, she would think something was really broken. She wouldn't say, "Oh, this is an ARM processor, so I guess I have to live with some lag."
Right.
People who don't know as much about technology have less tolerance for poor performance because they don't expect it and they don't know why it's happening, so they can't excuse it.
Right.
That's why I can, getting back to the earlier part of our show, have a $5 computer here, and I know that it's not going to run stuff super well when I'm browsing the web on it because it's a $5 computer.
Right.
But if I gave this to my mother, she would not take it with a grain of salt. Mm-hmm. She would, if she clicks an icon and something does not start loading immediately, she would start clicking it again because she thinks that it's not working, right? Because she expects things to work. So
you just described my mom. That was so funny.
But I don't blame them. Like, you should expect things to work. So we should never, I just want to break that paradigm that people have, that people who are not as tech savvy or not as tech enthusiastic as, say, someone like me, don't care about performance. They don't care about doing things that require necessarily pushing your computer to its limit.
Right.
They're not going to overclock.
They're not.
But they care.
They're not
very
doing
deeply.
things. They're not doing things like, my machine in the office has been running its 8 cores at 100% capacity for the last 2 hours rendering video, but they're not doing stuff like that. But they do expect. They see other people double click a thing and a thing happens, and when it doesn't do that for them, they don't understand. They think that they've missed something, or that,
Yeah. So, I have to tell you, I took this $999 computer and I put it side by side with its number one competitor, the Surface Pro 6, which actually does not cost that much more than this and could cost about the same depending on what you configure it with. So the Surface Pro 6 with a Core i5 processor, 8 gigs of RAM, and on 128 SSD, which is a real SSD. This uses, I think it's called EUFS, that EUFS file system, which is not EUFS storage, the same kind that's in smartphones, so not quite as fast as a real SSD. So you can get that Surface for $900. Now, $900 comes without the keyboard. So figure another $129 for the keyboard. Now you're up to $1,029. And if you want the pen, which you could live without, but let's say you want the pen because you get it with this for free, that will be $1,120. You'll be spending $129 more to get a Surface with the same keyboard and pen, and yet you'd be getting 8 gigs of RAM. You'd be getting much, much, much better performance. Now you wouldn't get the built-in 4G, which is very nice to have, but I think most people would rather tether it to their phone and get and have web pages load quickly because the web browser is not being overwhelmed by the processor can't handle the load, or it's out of RAM because you've got 10 tabs open. So, I think I think this is, I would not recommend somebody buy this. If it were, let's say, somebody gave it to you for free, or it was on sale for $500-$600, you might make a case that, like, wow, the screen is really nice. I could use this as a secondary device. That's where the Surface Go fits in, which is like starts at $400 and is 10 inches. And frankly, that should probably not be anyone's main computer either. It's not very powerful. It at least can run everything because it uses an Intel processor, but it's 10 inches, which is not adult sized for regular everyday use.
Yeah.
And it's and it's got a low power processor. So, there's a market of these devices that are secondary devices. But my question to the manufacturers and to our listeners is, like, who's it for? How much would you pay for a second computer when you because you would not be happy if you bought these as your main computer. And for less money, you could get something better. Like, if you don't want a 2-in-1 and you, like, if $999 is all you have to spend and you can't spend the extra $1,100 to get a Surface Pro, you could buy like a Dell XPS 13. You could buy a Benback 2-in-1 or something that is much more powerful than this. So, I cannot foresee a situation where somebody would use this as their primary computer. And so, who wants it as their secondary computer? And if you want it as your secondary, to spend $1,000 on your secondary computer, then you must have enough money to spend another $100 and get the Surface Pro. So, like, I don't quite get it, but it seems like there's a trend now of things that are sort of secondary devices that are expensive. This same week, we saw Lenovo's new Yoga Book, which does not have a real keyboard. It has an e-ink keyboard that is completely flat and has no tactile feedback whatsoever. And it's made for note taking it's made for note taking, and starts at $1,000. Well, again, note taking is great, but that's not going to be your only computer probably. So are you going to spend $1,000 on a note taking computer?
Right.
I don't know. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it seems like a device that exists for technology's sake and not necessarily for any particular consumer. It definitely seems bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I've asked around and people are like, oh, what about it? Corporate executives. If you're a corporate executive, you're not getting, like, first of all, your company's probably going to push you to get whatever the business gets, and businesses buy Dell, Lenovo, HP, or maybe sometimes Apple. Right. So, this is not going to be what they're not going to equip the office with Samsungs and then give the executive the high end one, like they do with, let's say, Dell's, where maybe executive might get like the XPS 13 while the proletariat gets like the Latitude, the clunky 15-inch Latitude that nobody wants, or or the Lenovo, where maybe the executive gets like the X1 Yoga, and the line workers get like a T480 or something. But like so, and also, if you're an executive, I guess that means that you're getting the most expensive stuff just because the company's paying for it. So you're going to get something fancier than this. Maybe you'll get a Surface Book. Right. Like, you're going to get something that runs. You're certainly not going to want to compromise on performance. Yeah. Even if you're an executive that doesn't know what you're doing, you're going to be calling. if I was IT department, I wouldn't let you because you're going to be calling me saying, hey, I tried to install this program and it didn't work. Or, hey, the company's VPN doesn't work on this thing because it only runs 32-bit apps. So like, I don't see who it's for.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously you have one. So that means that we're probably going to be either going to be or have already heard something official on it from you.
Yes, our review went up on Friday.
Excellent.
I should say that. Yes, my review is on tomshardware.com, and despite the fact that I told you I don't recommend it, there's still some interesting things to read about it.
Sure.
And the technology behind it. So I do encourage people to check out my review on tomshardware.com of the Samsung Galaxy Book 2.
Fantastic. Well, always appreciate info on devices like this, especially bizarro world devices where interestingly, I'm doing a review right now on a product that I don't understand why it exists. So I totally get it. You're like, I don't get it. But
I get why Qualcomm wants to make PCs. I get why people are interested. I am interested in seeing Qualcomm make a successful PC that runs all my apps.
Absolutely.
But if you're coming into the market with something that is kind of has some issues because it can't run everything, don't make it more expensive than stuff that has no issues. Come into the market with a humble price point because you know that people are having to take a risk on your technology and take and are going to have to live with drawbacks. That's like the Chromebooks. Now they have high-end Chromebooks, which I also don't understand. But at least when the technology was getting started, and for most people who buy Chromebooks, it's $200, $300, $400 tops.
Yeah.
It's cheap because they know, hey, this doesn't do everything that a full-fledged PC does. Therefore, we won't ask people to pay as much for it.
Right.
Now, granted, they use some fancy components, but that's like putting a golden chassis on a Yugo engine. Like, it's still not performing. So, like, I don't care if you tell me, oh, I have to charge you $1,000 because it costs so much money to put the OLED screen in it, and it costs so much money to make it in this form factor, and you don't understand this. We're not, making a big margin off of this. Good for you, but this is business, not charity. Consumers don't grade on a curve. They don't come and say, oh, it cost you $800, so I guess I should just pay you $1,000 for it. Like, it doesn't matter how much it costs you. It matters to make it. It matters what the value is to me. And the value of a secondary device is for most people not $1,000.
Yeah, for sure. Well, love the perspective. Having been down the ARM road, not quite the same way, but I can definitely, I can commiserate. Thank you for bringing this thing, and definitely people go check out the full review.